Well, hello, devs, and welcome to this episode of Python Code Course, where we'll be talking about the fourth project, Photo Gallery. So let's get into it. Here in my code editor, VS Code, I'm going to be sharing with you the code and how everything was done. I will start off with the very first line, which is just a Tkinter import because that's the module that we'll be using for this project. Notice that on line 1, it is a underline, squiggly underline here under the keyword from. And mainly that's because we're not utilizing all of the different classes and things that are within the module. So that's just because we're not using everything. But we are using some things. We are using things like labels and buttons here. Not much going on here, but it's packed full of good stuff that I want to go over with you. The next line, line 2, is from the pillow module. And we use the PIL, which is a fork of the Python imaging library. And this allows us to get our images. Okay, so we'll be using image TK and image from that module. Okay, so the first thing that we do is to set up our screen, our main screen, which we will call screen. Okay, so the first thing we do is define TK, which is the screen. And the next thing we'll do is we'll set up the title of the screen. This is what's going to go up at the top of the screen when we run it. Okay, then the next thing we'll do is we'll set up our little icon that goes right next to the title. To the left of the title, we'll have the little icon. And I've set up that file. And then the geometry, which is the size of the screen when it opens up, is going to be 800 by 850. That's on line 7. Okay, so we can move right along and go to line 9. And this is images equals open bracket, close bracket. Okay, so what we're doing here is using a list. And so the brackets mean that we are describing a list and we're assigning it to images. Okay, and then the next thing that we do is that we take in a 0 value for a variable called count. Okay, so that's going to be an integer. So we set up those initial variables for our project. And these are global variables, all right, within our project. So the next thing that we do here on line 13 is define, I think we've talked about the DEF. We define a function called load photos, okay? And notice that I start using this underscore here. I don't think that I really did that in the last couple of projects, but I wanted to go ahead and start using the Python naming convention, which is the snake case, which means all your different variable names should have should be separated by an underscore. So that's why I have the load photos as a descriptive name for my function. Okay, and so the next thing is I define remember that list images. So we're going to use that here in load photos. We're going to use our list that we initialized. And then we're going to also have an album, which is going to be opening of a file. So this file holds all the pictures that we have within our photo gallery called photos.txt. So all of these are, I'm going to go ahead and show you what photos.txt looks like. Basically, it's just one line of code that shows the fully qualified name of the files that we're using all in one, and it's just separated by a comma. Okay, so that is all that we're doing here in that photo gallery. Okay, so that's line 15 where we open up this file. Then on line 16, we want to read the lines inside the file. Well, we only have one line, but that's fine. Just in case we have more than one line, we can always do that. The next photo, we're going to split up that line separated by commas. So that's why we reassign next photo to be this first value, which is the zero index of next photo. And we want to split it up based on the commas. Okay, so now it'll create a new list, right, that has each individual file name for our photos. All right, now I printed the length here, but this is not really necessary. This was mainly for debugging purposes, so I can really just take that out. Len of next photo just basically tells you how long or how many photos are in next photo. Okay, so took that out because that's not really necessary. And then line 18 is a for loop. I don't think we've done for loops. So here we are, we're doing a for loop, and we have an identifier for each element in next photo. So next photo is a list, and so every item in that list is being described here in this loop. So we want to go through each item in next photo. And then we use that colon, which tells us, okay, we have a block of instructions coming up and it's indented. Okay, now remember, if you hit enter after the colon, here it's going to automatically indent. So that's what happened here on line 19. And all it is we're calling this append function. This append function keeps adding to the end of images. So images is going to be a list of openings of the actual item. Okay, and what is that item? It's the file name. So we're adding the file name. Let me move over. Excuse me. So we're adding the item, which is the file name. We're opening that using the image class, and it's within the image TK. I know it's a lot to add, but this is the nomenclature. This is how you would open up a photo image. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is open the image, and before you can actually use the image anywhere in the Tkinter app. Okay, so then we append it to images. All right, so we keep on doing this for every item in next photo. And then we close the album. So whenever you open up a file, it's a good practice to just close it. So we call the close command for the album, okay, using the dot. Now remember, the dot is just a way of accessing a function within a class, okay? All right, and we use the open and close parentheses to show that it is a method. All right, next thing on line 22, we are defining the view next function. And this function uses the count and the images to decide on which one is the next image that we want to show. So we want to show the next image, and if for some reason the count is less than the length of image minus 1, then we will increase the count and show that next image by configuring that label button. Okay. Actually, I don't, it's a label, not a button. So photo label is what we use, and we configure that using the images count. So we use the count as the index of images. And so the count at first was 0, right? Because we initialized it to 0. And then we increased it by 1. So now we're going to the next opening of the next image. And we put that in, and that will display our next image. And we keep on going until we reach the end of the list. Now, when it reaches the end of the list, then what happens is it goes into this else part of the statement, and it resets it to 0. So basically, it's like in a loop. It's allowing you to keep on looping through in a forward motion. That's why the view next allows you to keep on going to the next, keep on going to the next, and actually loop through and go back to 0. All right, and then we return images. So that just allows us to return the list. And although you may not need to use the list, it's just good to return that value in case you needed to use it for some reason. All right, so the next thing we do on line 34 is that we are going to define a view previous function. Okay, so view next allowed us to go forward in the list. Now view previous is going to allow us to go backwards. So say for instance, you're at photo number 3 and you're like, oh no, I want to go back and see 2. So you can all click on the previous button, and that will allow you to go into the previous video, or I'm sorry, photo. All right, so it's pretty much the same if statement. The only difference is we have a minus sign here. We are subtracting, so we are decrementing count, and we're going back and showing the image with that count. And if for some reason we get to the if we get to the first one, right? If it's greater than 0, that means the first one, the last possible one will be 1, right? Once we get to 1 and we see it's not greater than 0, then it's going to go into this else statement, and then we're going to say show the last one. So that it's going to be looping backwards, and you're able to rewind and go all the way past the first one and go to the last one. So this allows you to keep on going continuously in a loop going backwards. Okay? And then we return images as normal. 43 is just showing the count based on where you're at. Okay? On line 46, we have load photos is being called. Okay, so this is a function call. So we are calling the load photos function. So that all the images are loaded. All right. So then we're going to define some labels here. And we'll just say we're going to define the widgets for the screen. All right. And so the first thing we have here is a label widget, and we call it photo label. And basically it's just images equal image count. So based on what the count is, so initially count is 0. So it's going to open up this very first one, first photo in our list, and it has a width of 800 and a height of 750. So we set up a fixed size for the photo. This means if the photo is bigger than this, it's going to crop it centered at 800 by 750. All right. So just keep that in mind. You may not see all your photos. If you want, you can always change the size of the screen that you are watching or looking at if you know your photos are going to be bigger than this. All right, but I went ahead and set up a width and a height for my images. All right, so next we set up the grid. That's the layout of the items on our widget, on our screen. And it's going to be located at row 0, column 0 with a column span of 2. All right, and then the next button here on line 53 is going to be attached to the screen, and it's going to have a text of next. So this is our next button, and it's going to say next, and we assign it to a font of Arial Black and a size of 20. All right. And the next thing we do is set up a command. So the command is view next. So whenever the button is pressed, it's going to go to that view next function that we talked about. And this next button is going to be located at row 1, column 1. All right. So, and then we have our next button. I'm sorry, our preview button, a previous button on line 56. So on line 56, we have preview button, and its text, it says previous. And we have the same font and everything. And the command is going to go to the view previous function. All right. Notice that when we call the function here, we don't put open and close parentheses. Whenever we command, we don't need the open and close parentheses. All right, and then that's about it. Once we put it on the grid at row 1, column 0, we are at the end of our loop. This is a very basic photo gallery. It didn't take very many lines of code like our previous projects, but nonetheless, we are using file IO or file handling for this um, project. So that's a glimpse into how to use a separate file within your project. And so you can include additional images, as many images as you like. Now, see, if we had not used this function, then we would have to use this one thing, however many images we had, and that would make it very, very long. So I truncated the whole option of loading the photos using our album. Okay, so this is the reason why I did it, so that we can decrease the lines of code and make it more robust. And you'll be able to add more photos as you go along. Okay, and not have to worry about whether or not you're going to have so many um, image.tk.photo image.open item, or it wouldn't be item, it would just be the file name that would go here. Okay, so that is it for this project, Photo Gallery. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Like and subscribe so we can keep popping some more code.